So good day everyone. I am Donlis Marie Ausejo, a BTE third year student in Negros Oriental State University. So today, I'm going to answer the given questions in assignment 4 in BTE12. So letter A question, tell me about a time when you were faced with a challenging situation. How did you solve it? So the most challenging situation that happened when I worked was that I was the only one on duty and there was a lot of rush work to do. So the solution I made was to borrow someone from another department to help me. So letter B, do you usually set goals at work? If yes, could you give me an example of a goal you had and how you achieved it? So yes, my goal is to wake up early so I don't get caught in heavy traffic and I come to work early. Letter C, give me an example of a time you made a mistake at work. So one example that I made a mistake at work was that I didn't taste well the right taste of a flavor and it was able to use in the production, so everything that was done was put on hold. So letter D, have you ever faced conflict with a coworker? How did you resolve the situation? So yes, I complained to the supervisor that we should be confronted each other so that we could give a statement and have peace inside and outside of work. So letter E, tell me about a time when you handled the pressure well. So the most I feel the pressure is when there has a simultaneous production of products for export and local that should be monitored strictly. Letter F, was there a time when you had to be very strategic in order to meet a goal? Yes, you always have to find a way to make the job easier and better. Letter G, give me an example of a situation when you showed initiative and took charge of a situation. I helped to evaluate the products to the assigned personnel to complete the task as soon as possible because the project was waiting for by the client. Letter H, tell me about a time when you went above and beyond your duties for a job or task. Yes, at the time, I need to be complacent to decide on my own because I knew I was doing the right thing and it was in line with the guidelines. I reported this to the supervisor for formality as he was my boss. The decision always happens when the client needs the product to deliver. So letter I, did you ever have to correct one of your superiors when they were wrong? How did you approach that situation? Yes, I tried to correct my supervisor because he was new to the department, so I told him what is usually done when there is a production problem. Letter J, have you ever had to work under a tight deadline? Yes, it felt too haggard because the report needs to be submitted immediately. Letter K, how did you deal with coworkers that don't cooperate or can't contribute enough? I talked to him or her slowly and advised him or her not to be shy. So letter L, tell me about a time when a client was asking for the impossible. How did you explain and communicate this to them? So when the client begged me to consider good his van even though it was rejected. So I explained to him well the possibles that happen when products are loaded in his car that the product is damaged and contaminated. Letter M, give me an example of a time when you didn't meet a client's expectations. How did you deal with the situation? So the raw materials he brought were rejected. So I apologized because his raw materials based on the laboratory analysis were not meet the specification requested by the company. So letter N, is there a situation you think you couldn't handle better or differently? Oh yes, I will handle it better and differently, especially in those situations with a lot of workloads and then a lot of absent personnel. I will I will of course ask for help from another department to help me solve the problem. Letter O. How do you adapt to sudden changes in the workplace? Could you give me an example? I got along very well with my coworkers. I extended my patience too much so that I can learn well from training until I was left alone to work. Letter P. What was the first job you ever had? Do you remember how you adapted and learned the ropes? I'd work as a QA analyst in the food company. I'd work on the task religiously. Letter Q. Tell me about a time when you had to think on your feet in order to deal with a situation. To decide alone is not easy, but I stand entirely because I strongly believe I made it right and it is aligned with the company's standard. Letter R. Sometimes employers put too much on their employees' plates. Was there a time when you were overwhelmed with work? How did you handle the situation? So in the beginning, it was inevitable not to feel nervous because of fear that you might not be able to do the job well, but because of willingness to work. I strongly believe that I can perform the test better by following the instructions and guidelines strictly. Letter S. Tell me about a time when you had the liberty to be creative with your work. Was it exciting or difficult for you? So when I got used to the flow of work and I got the right work strategy daily, it made my day became easy and quick. So the last question, letter T, give me an example of a time when you and your team had opposing views on an issue. How did you persuade them to go with your decision? So the disagreement between our supervisors affects our team, but then we are ignored and forced to come to work daily and will just then work better instead. So that's all the questions and thank you.